Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are live once more. I'm going to be giving my attempts to discuss components a try one more time. I'm going to try to avoid the long, empty pauses, regardless of how many people are here, because I realize that YouTube is recording this for me, and you guys can watch this after the fact. So, I'll be talking about signals for a little bit while I try to set up this demonstration arrangement here. Hopefully, when we're done, we'll have something pretty configurable that we can use to, I don't know, look at the effects and behaviors of the various components. Hang on, I gotta switch scenes here, and I don't know why that's not catching it. All right, so signals in Barotrauma. There are two forms of signals that are not interchangeable. Um, there's power signals and there are data signals. So power signals are not really signals. When you connect a device to a power supply or connect one to a power consumer, it creates um, it creates a network, a list of networked items. And the nature of that network is important because that how to put this, it's tricky to explain. This is a video game, and being a video game, it's driven by code, and you don't have to understand the code to understand the implications of that. For example, when you design a new sub, and as you add parts to the sub is essentially saved as a massive XML file. Each item that you add is a tag, like just like building a web page. And those tags are appended one at the bottom. Every time you add a new item, it's stuck onto the bottom of the list. Uh-oh, what's this? Okay. Um, so when you understand that the game has to behave as computer code and just it's generating video as a byproduct, then you start to understand how signals are formed and how they behave in the game. So power signals um, have either power networks, and the networks can be visible to one another. They cannot be visible to one another. For example, if you put a supercapacitor in your primary power grid, so it's powered from a junction box which is connected through other junction boxes to your reactor. The supercapacitor, and look, I said I was going to be doing wiring. I'm not doing it at the same time, so I'll just keep talking. The supercapacitor has an input and an output, but they're not bidirectional. It's unidirectional. It can't pass power backwards from the power out input from the other side. Even if you put batteries and put another supercapacitor on this power out port, none of that power can go backwards to the supplying network that this thing drew its power from. Um, and so on the left side, we have the primary power grid that's supplying the supercapacitor with power. And on the right side, we have the secondary grid that is drawing power from this supercapacitor. And you can connect something to both of them if you want, but that's mixes up my explanation here, so we're not going to talk about that. Basically, if your supercapacitor is full and your primary power grid goes down, all the devices that are being powered from the supercapacitor don't are unaffected by that primary grid failure. And the only thing that changes to the primary grid's perspective is the charge rate or the relative charge. So if you've got a circuit that tells your supercapacitor to recharge after it gets to a certain point, then that's what the primary network sees, is the load from the supercapacitor. Similarly, if you are running the if you're running guns or if you're running lights or you're running fabricators or whatnot from the supercapacitor, and as you change those loads, it doesn't affect the primary grid. And if the primary grid goes up or down, that doesn't affect the secondary grid. So hopefully that explains the power network, because there's not really power signals when you connect something on the grid to the when you connect something on the power grid to a new device. It's added to the list on the network that that are checked whenever there's as the power supply changes and the power load changes, then the list of items on that one network are determined by the power connections. There's really no signals that are sent around on the wires that you add. It's just the wires dictate the items on that list, if that makes any sense whatsoever. We have a viewer. What do you know? We got the one viewer. Hopefully he's not feeling lonely. Mr. Viewer, feel free to say something in the chat. Hang on, do I have anything moving on? YouTube keeps bouncing between excellent connection and no data. So we talked about power signals, and now there's data signals. Now, data signals do have independent signals that go back and forth on the wires that you place, and these signals are updated. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what happened there, but we had a little glitch, a little technical difficulties. Hopefully, we still have our one viewer in the chat. Hey, it's Sean. Whoa, Lewandowski. Am I saying that right? Either way, Sean, welcome to the stream. Um, where was I? Talking about power networks, but I don't know when when the stream drops. So, Sean, if you would help remind me with how far you what when I dropped, how far was I talking when the stream stopped? I want top chat. I want live chat. About 30, 40 seconds ago. That my memory's not that good. I was talking about primary, secondary networks, and how the signals that go around the ship. Oh, hang on. Tried switching 480p. No. It was my end, 100%. So first of all, understand I live in eastern Canada, not rural and by our standards, anyways. But we don't have. It's a relatively low population density around here, so we're not a priority when it comes to the technologies of information and data transfer. So gigabit speed is just becoming barely a thing around here. Uh-oh, I lost him again. No, our one viewer. Do I have any audio? Do I have something wrong with my audio? There is something wrong with my audio. You there? Damn it. YouTube, why you gotta make everything so complicated? Oh, Feel the Pain, West Coast of Australia isn't much better, and yes, I have audio. Oh, wow. Okay, that was good latency. The fact that I think this Game First app is actually helping a lot. Okay, so where were we? Power signals. So devices are powered from the network, like if it's connected to a reactor or it's connected to a supercapacitor. Devices by default, if you look at, say, something like none of this one, you'll notice that down here it talks about the minimum voltage and the power consumption. So the nominally, if there's all the power that this thing could possibly want, it will pull 1,000 kilowatts or whatever the units are. The units of power are not fully understood to me because there are voltage and there are kilowatts. And I know Torca was trying to make this as realistic as possible when he redesigned it. Props to Torca for the new recent power changes. But what this min voltage means is that if the network supply, so if the device that's supplying power to all of the connections on its power network, or should I say, the sum total of power producing objects, is you can have 2 reactors, you can have 1,000 batteries, you can have all these things producing power on these little independent networks, and the sum total of voltage, if that drops below, in this case, 500, so 0.5 times 1,000, if it drops below 500, this device will stop working. And the thing is the load is rationed throughout all the devices on its network, proportionately according to their draw. So if you have 3 of these oxygen generators, you would have a total draw of 3,000. And as the power would fluctuate from the reactor, let's say it drops to 1,500, the oxygen generators are sharing the power equally, so they would all go offline at the same time, if that makes any sense. If you would have something like, if you have 2 oxygen generators, I think there's a shuttle one, isn't there? Hang on. Shuttle oxygen generator. So this guy consumes, let's make this 800 just for demonstrative purposes. Right, if you were to connect this guy and this guy to this junction box to be powered from this reactor, the sum total load would be 1,800. If you were to if your reactor's output were to drop below half that, which is 900, because the load is being shared equal or proportionately to their respective maximum draws, they would both go offline at the same time. This is a tricky little concept to understand, but it makes a little bit of sense when you think about how, when you understand that everything is pulling power proportionately to its maximum load, then it starts to make sense why things around the ship go offline when they do. John, can you put a hand up or something if that makes sense? You're the only one here, so this is pretty gonna be tailored to you. Put you on the spot here. Nope, nothing. Man, must be a long lag to Australia. It is probably exactly halfway around the planet from here. All right, I'm just gonna keep going. So I don't. Oh, hang on. Here we go. It does. I'm working on my own sub. If I'm hearing you right, I'm effectively eliminating the need for a dedicated junction box room. There are pros and cons. So you can have what I call the. I had a word for it, and I thought it was quite clever. Centralized junction boxes, where you put all the junction boxes in one room, and then there's distributed junction boxes where you put them where they need to be. And there's advantages and disadvantages to each model, right? Like if you look at something like I think the Typhon original one. Let's save this. Components bonanza, yes. I have a video I'm working on how to assess reactor, or how to assess um, subs objectively. I think it's a Typhon that has the distributed power junction boxes. Oh, it's certainly not centralized. So let's just say you've got all your junction boxes in here like this design. This is great because as an engineer, if you want to go check on your junction boxes, you just have to poke your head in this room and look at everything. I can later on, if you want, Sean, I can show you how to make a condition indicator that just puts a light on every junction box that tells you how healthy it is without having to look at numbers. I know we can now craft text displays, which is super handy. Thank you very much, Undertow. But I prefer lights. So I have a system where you put a light bulb in, or a little light component in, doesn't need to be connected to the power network, and it has a green, yellow, or red light that flashes faster depending on the condition of the device. It's 4 components. It's a light component and 3 regex. No, 2 regex and an oscillator, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right. Possibly 3 regex. Anyways, long story short, I like it because you can just poke your head in, look at all the lights. If they're all blinking green, you're good. If not, you gotta go in and fix anything. But here's the problem. These junction boxes, I believe, have a 20% chance, if they're by default, 20% chance of bursting into flames when they reach their minimum condition. So if you look here, where's repairable? Repairable. So the minimum deterioration condition is 0%. And the minimum repair threshold here is 80%. So when this thing reaches 100%, or anything over 80%, if your repair gets interrupted or if you get it to 100%, it can't be repaired again until the condition of the device falls below 80%. Right? And if it reaches, I don't think it says in here what the fire threat is. If it reaches 0%, there's a certain percent chance that it's going to burst into flames. If it bursts into flames, there's 2 problems with that. 1, it's going to start damaging all the components around it. And 2, you cannot approach the other junction boxes to fix them while this fire's in place. Right? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like the reactor. The reactor has 2 timers, right? It has the meltdown delay. Where'd it go? Reactor has a meltdown delay and the fire delay. If if the temperature of the reactor goes above 6,000 degrees, so you got that bar graph. Hang on, opened. If the temperature, there's usually 2 little lines here. I think the thresholds are 3,000, 6,000, possibly 4,000, 6,000. The point is that anything lower doesn't matter if you have a decent reactor controller because it's going to keep it online. But if it goes over 6,000, these timers start going. Oh, wait. Streamy! There he is, the guy with the Seawolf. How's it going? All right, we have a return customer. Excellent. So, as I was saying, the reactor has 2 timers. When the temperature goes above 6,000, they both start at the same time. In this case, you have 10 seconds to get that reactor temperature down below 6,000 again before it catches fire. And when it catches fire, you cannot get to it to turn it off or turn it down, which is why I always recommend having a remote scram button somewhere. So that if you need to say, oh my God, we're all going to die, and you push the button and shut down the reactor, yes, you've got no power around the ship, but at least you're not all about to suffer horrible radiation burns. Which, by the way, when your reactor melts down, it's not instantly catastrophic to the campaign. Sorry. It's not instantly catastrophic. You can actually recover a ship from a melted reactor with patience and a lot of radiation cure, or pucks. If you have pucks, you're fine. But the point is that each sub has most of the things around vanilla subs, like the Typhon and the Winter Halter and this R29 or whatever. They share these things all have the original properties that you get by default. However, the reactors are all relatively different in terms of power output, in terms of meltdown delay. Most of them have 0.2 for a fuel consumption rate. 0.25 is relatively high. I think one of the highest is 0.3, but most of them is 0.2. Now, Streamy was watching yesterday. I don't know if I showed this part. Streamy, did I talk about going into Visual Studio Code and using that to view the sub's properties, or the properties of the components in the game? Did I talk about how to do that yesterday? Uh-oh. 9 views. Wow, I feel popular. No, don't think so. Okay, so I was saying earlier, and I think I say it a lot, this is a video game. And because it's a computer program, it's driven by code. And you don't have to understand the code to understand the implications of that. You just have to know what those things mean. For example, data signals have a shared property. I'll talk about that in a second, but I want to go to, is this my desktop button? Hang on. I think that's my desktop button. I want to switch to desktop. There we go. Okay. So you can use any editor that you want. You can use Notepad if you want to view these XML files. But the point is, this is the code that drives the game. Sorry, these are the source files that drive the game. If you want to look at the GitHub on a browser, you can. But I like you can open it up in Visual Studio Code, which is why I kind of like the Visual Studio Code thing. If you go to, let's find reactor. I think reactors are under power. No, reactor. There you go. Reactor G, reactor XML. Okay. Reactor 1, type reactor, linkable, damage by explosions, explosion damage multiplier, broken sprite, fire delay, meltdown delay, fuel consumption rate. So all of your properties of the, like if you, we have, hang on. If you want to look at a sub file, you have to do a little bit of magic here. Let's see. You gotta go to, where's my Barotrauma? Barotrauma. Local mods. Where's Seawolf? There we go. I hope you don't mind, Streamy. We're gonna talk about your sub here again. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rename this. Instead of having a sub file, we're gonna call it a gzip. And yes, okay. So gzip is a compressed file, and it's going to have Seawolf, another file in here by the same name. And we're gonna rename this. Oh, not this one. We're going to rename this. Oh, for Pete's sake. Stupid keyboard. There we go. To an XML file. You'll notice it was extensionless. Right? Now, we open this as in here. Lo and behold, this is the code that drives your sub. So I can tell you, just by looking at it, that the first thing you did when you built this thing was start with a large inside wall. Then you started with a shell file. Then you started with another shell file. Like, these are all, like, this is, you built the shell of the sub before you started building the inside of your sub. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Come on. All right. While I'm waiting for the lag to catch up, because I'm pretty sure he heard me and yes, you did. Okay, good. So basically, when you start building a sub, let's try it. It doesn't matter. You guys get the point. The point is that as you add items to the sub, this list gets appended, right? So let's see. We started here. We got a light component. We got another light component. We got another light component. We got more light components. Another light component. Waypoints. The computer generates waypoints automatically. So this was most likely not you. And then we got more shells. So like if I were to delete everything in here one step at a time, it would show us step by step how he generated his sub. The motion detectors, that's part of a door, delay and not. Yeah, this is the door with buttons. Yeah, this is the automatic, this is your auto door assembly file that comes with the game. So he built this shell, he put in some decks, and then he started adding doors. That's right, the blue wires, the motion detector. This is all, yeah. Then you put another door in and component. Yeah. See, do you see what I'm saying, guys? This is like when you understand how the sub files are generated, you can see, there you go. Put another door in. We got a lot of doors here, which is good. Doors are good. You don't want to have a sub that's one massive component. That's for damn sure. Door with buttons, more wires, door with buttons. This will be another door with buttons. Oh, hatch. We got a hatch. Hatch with buttons, duck blocks. See, it's not. See, it's funny to read these because I do it completely the other way. Not that I'm complaining. Like your sub's well designed. These guys got storage for days. If you didn't see it yesterday, sorry. Oh, diving suit lockers, crate shelves. He knew what he was doing because he's hasn't put in a single machine, a single periscope, or anything else. He started with storage. Batteries. We got a battery here. Oxygen tanks. These are part of shelf. This is an assembly for this. Oh, we got supplies cabinets. Two medium cabinets. Two, three, four, five, six supplies cabinets. Another shell. So you see where I'm going with this, guys? Like, this is how you can look at your sub and start to see and understand where everything comes from. So let's look for your reactor. God damn it. No, Streamy, it's my side. I have this ancient ROG laptop, and it's really okay. Yeah, this is kind of embarrassing, guys. There we go. Let's look at the reactor. Okay. When I said yeah, okay. Let's look at the reactor. So here we have some of the basic properties of his reactor. We see a max output of 10,000. We see a meltdown delay of 2 minutes, which is what I was saying is kind of cheating. That you can go get a coffee and come back and you'd be fine. 20 seconds on the fire delay is reasonable. We were talking about balance yesterday. This is what I'm talking about. Voltage, vulnerable to EMP, can be picked, allowed in-game editing. All right. So you'll notice here that we have as you add wires, they're given IDs, and the IDs are sequential as you add them to the sub. Hopefully that's obvious. And then you note here power output link with 666. So you've got whatever your 666th item. There we go. Works again. Yay. If it goes down, guys, just say something in the chat. I'm trying to pay a lot of attention to the chat, and but I can't see it. My screen's kind of. I had two screens here, and the laptop's somewhat behind the other one, so I can't really see the status. Okay, so here, power output. These are connections to all of these at once. So it's an item container. It can hold, where does it say? 4 items contained blank, 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 blank. Medium steel cabinet, so that's probably immediately beside. Like you can look at this. I don't have to see the sub to tell you what it looks like, roughly. But put your fire extinguisher brackets all in at the same time, didn't you? Not complaining. I'm just saying, like, these are interesting little habits of. I can tell you how you like almost your logic as you're doing a sonar transducer. You built one before, I thought. I saw one up here. Oh, is that your reactor? Small pump, signal check. Blue wires, small pump, signal check. Whoa, ladder. Anyways, the point is that these subs are driven by code. And there are preset probability ranges. Oh, hang on. Does it remember the things you deleted? No. When something's deleted, it's removed from the list, like the entire XML file. If you delete it and put it back, it goes into the bottom of the list, which is why when you add something, connect wires to it, and then delete it, those connections are broken. Because now when it's added to the bottom of the list, it doesn't remember those connections that you made originally. It's one of the more annoying parts of the sub editor, and it's a really annoying part of the game because if you unwire something by accident in game, you're kind of shit out of luck until you run all the wires again. But it's it is what it is. Barotrauma has done a great job with keeping this game, keeping the code simple. An XML file is not the first thing I would have tried, but it's certainly the best thing I can think of in retrospect. Okay, because I built the front of the sub, the shells, and then started mapping out the sub. Did you guys want me to build a sub or like something stupidly small and kind of show you my thought patterns as we go? Or do you like, I wanted to talk about components in this stream, but I haven't put it in the title, so technically we can talk about anything. What do you guys want to see? Um, Up to me. I guess it is up to me, isn't it? Well, I want to talk about the components. I'm sorry. I know we're like some people was talking about building a sub in the poll online, but hang on here. We're going to shift right click. We're going to turn this into 000, 0, 0, and 0. My laptop doesn't get all upset again. All right, so here are the 32 components. I believe it's 32. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 5 is 30 and plus 2. Okay, there we go. Okay, so all of these components work on the data network except for the relay, which works on both the data network and the power network. The data network, it connects inputs to outputs, outputs to inputs technically, right? Nothing happens if you connect an input to an input, and if you have any experience with electronics, the properties of parallel connections do not apply. So if you add 3 wires coming out of the signal out port, the signal is the same to all of them, but the signal strength is not divided by 3, right? If you add 5 power connections or whatever to the signal in port, providing power to one does not provide power to the other 4 as it would if you were to wire it in real life. The limit of each connection is 5, I believe, 5 connections to each port. There are some that are limited to 1. There is a mod that an oscillator in here. I do have an oscillator. I'll take this, we'll copy it over here, right? I'm going to take this and we'll copy it over here. It doesn't matter what we're connecting right now because I'm not going to actually run it. So we do a signal out and we put that over here, okay? If we change this to, call this a sine wave, and it doesn't matter what the period is, but the point is, if we make this a decimal, like the thing that comes out of the oscillator component in the current mode is a floating point value between 0 and 1 that's following a sine curve, right? So I don't want to get into the actual digits of it, but it's as it goes up and down, it's constantly changing the value going out of this port, and the input port of here is receiving those signals as they're changed at 60 times per second. But it's not a floating point signal that's sent in the code. The code, if you know anything about coding in classes, right? There's logicals, there's integers, there's floating points, there's characters, and there's these things called arrays. And an array is just an arbitrary stack of boxes, and each box has its own contents. Technically, you can nest arrays, but in this case, they're never nested. So if you know what a string is, it's an array of characters, right? So if you were to put A, B, C, D, it's a 4-box array, and the first box has the character A, second one has the character B and C and D, right? And so any other form of data in this game, like logicals or integers or strings of like text, can be represented by their respective digits. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, like the number 1234, it's actually a 4-box array with the characters 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Right? So if you were to feed that numeric signal into a text display, the text display would convert it from 1234 to the letters 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and display them in that order. Does that make sense? I'm hoping it makes sense. So, but the point is that there's different types of signals and there's different types of ports, right? So where was I? Let's go into the components bonanza. I'm not done this. I made it so far and my game crashed, which is annoying as hell. But basically, let me get this out of the way. When you connect any of these different types of data, really, that's where it's saved? Hang on. There we go. Right, these are the different possible connections from a memory block going into any other type of block. Right, so if you have a string and you feed it into, say, something. Hang on, where's our components here, right? You feed that into an absolute component. So this is numeric. Anybody who doesn't know what the absolute function is numbers have a magnitude and a polarity, or for lack of a better term, the sign is another way that people describe it. It's positive, negative. So the absolute function returns only the magnitude of that value. So if you have positive 10, the magnitude is 10 and the sign is plus. So that gives you 10. If you have a negative 10, then that's the magnitude of 10 and a sign of negative. So the absolute function would return just the magnitude and therefore would return a 10. If you were to feed a string into here, nothing comes out because the string does not have any numerical values. Like if you were to say A, B, C, D and feed that into the absolute component, nothing would come out because it has no magnitude in it, regardless of whether it's positive or negative. There's nothing there, so nothing comes out. But if you were to put the string 1, 2, 3, 4, thinking of it in like quotation marks, even you wouldn't put the quotation marks in. If you were to put that string and feed it into the absolute component, the absolute would interpret that string numerically and spit out the magnitude of that value. Does that make sense? I keep saying, does that make sense? I don't know why, because I'm not getting any response from the chat. So there are numeric inputs, there's logical inputs, and there's string inputs, and there's what I call universal inputs. Universal inputs are just, they're copied from the inputs to the outputs. For example, if you look at an AND component here, here we go. You have two logical inputs, and you have a universal input, and then you have a universal output. So the logical inputs in Barotrauma, anything that is not exactly 0 is true. If you're thinking true false, right? So anything that's 0.001 or like 1,000 or 1 or whatever, it's interpreted as true because this is a logical port. That's what I'm talking about. So strings A, B, C, D, E, F interpreted as true, I believe. I'm gonna have to double check that one. But the point is that these two ports they interpret the incoming signals as logical values, and if they're both not 0, then this output is whatever the true output is here. You can define this in game. You can set it to A, you can set it to 4, you can set it to 1, you can set it to 0 if you want. If you want the true output to be flipped or the same for either one, you can actually change this output to be 0 and it will stay static. So like as long as that value doesn't change in the property panel, then that value will be the true output of this block. However, if you connect some other signal to the set output port, when these two blocks are both non-zero, this whatever is coming in here is immediately broadcast out the other side. That's what I mean when I say universal input. If you put a string in set output, a string comes out of the output. If you put like a decimal floating point value into the set output, the same floating point value comes out of the signal output port. Hopefully that makes sense because I'm about to move on. Yeah. So there's also this thing in this thing called time frame. So if you have a time frame of 0, that means that the signals coming into the AND component must be received at the exact same time in order to trigger the true output. But if you put, say, 1 in the time frame, that means that you have 1 second. Once one of the non-zero values arrives at the AND component, you have 1 more second for the other one to arrive in order to get that true. So they don't necessarily have to arrive at the same time. Now remember, this whole system is updated sequentially in the order that they appear in your XML file. Pardon me for yawning. And all of those are processed before it moves on to the next iteration of like the game stream, right? So you don't necessarily have to. I've never really changed this time frame unless I absolutely have to, and even then I usually use a delay block for that purpose. I think I figured it out, guys. Are we live? Yes, we are. I somehow accidentally mapped the stop streaming button to, to the stop to my escape key. Wow, do I feel stupid right now? You can tell this live stream thing's new to me because every time I hit the escape key, because like what I use escape, right? If you load this up here in Barotrauma, if I open up this signal in, signal out, you hit the escape key, it goes away. Wow, that's a Hodor moment right there. Okay, so Kos Akos. I was gonna show you. Who hands up if you guys have some trigonometry experience? Hang on here. Sine, cosine animation. Because a lot of this made more sense to me. Hang on here, YouTube. Where's the YouTube thing? Sine curve and the cosine. Hang on. Hang on. Any trigonometry, guys? Anything? Oh, God. My desktop is horrifyingly overpopulated right now. We're going to turn that off. Images. There's one of these. I've seen one in here that was good before. The unit circle. Yeah, this will work. Yeah, sine curve on the unit circle. So let's bring this over here. Hang on. You guys probably can't see anything, but I think this is what they call an involute curve. Can you guys see that? This one. Where's my YouTube stream? Right. So the sine and the cosine. Okay, not me. Okay. So sine and cosine are related to what's called a unit circle. For a circle focused on 0 with a radius of 1. Okay, there we go. In that case, we will not worry about this any further. I won't talk about it too much because we have 5 concurrent viewers. So basically, cosine will take an angle. You can actually modify it, I believe, in game to use radians instead of degrees, but it returns a relationship between. It's a decimal value between that angle and the unit circle, which would be cosine adjacent over hypotenuse. So the x component versus the unit circle has a radius of 1, so the hypotenuse is always 1. So basically, the cosine is always the x component of your angled vector. Basically, you put a decimal value, a degree value in here, and it spits out a fraction, right? That's a cosine. The a cosine is if you give it that fraction, it will spit out the same angle that you fed into it. I'm hoping that's simple enough for people to be able to Google it because I don't want to dwell on the trigonometry. It's boring as shit. Adders. So moving on from ACOs to the addition block. So adders are, you take two signals, it interprets them numerically. 1 second, guys. My cat keeps opening the door. Shush. Okay, so the addition component takes two numeric inputs and sums them and gives it the output, right? That's where the signal comes from. If you put a two string values or two blank signals, if you put anything into that is non-numeric into the addition component, it doesn't put a. Okay, my cat's getting really up my nerves right now. He does not respect the little red light outside. We gotta talk about these boundaries, cat. Anyways, addition components also have what's called clamping. So a clamped limit is it puts a hard limit on whatever values the can come out of this addition block. Hang on. So if you put a 10 into that clamped limit, then no matter what, say, oh, hang on, back. What did you miss? We talked about the absolute value component. We talked about the my cat being a dickhead, and we talked about the cosine and arc cosine blocks. Oh my goodness, this cat's a blue glutton for punishment. He just come back to lay against stuff and yell at me. Give me 1 second. I gotta close that door again. My goodness. All right, so we're down to 2. Hopefully that's Streamy and Sean. Because you guys have been here since the beginning, and I'm really only talking to you guys. If you guys, hey, Odin, Texas, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. We're talking about components right now. This is the addition component. We're talking about clamping. Addition, you guys know what addition is. Fun fact, addition is what's called commutative, which means it doesn't matter what order you connect in the signal A and signal B. So it doesn't sound like a big deal, but something like subtraction is not commutative, because if you connect A and B in a different order, you get a different result. Same with multiplication. Multiplication is commutative, division is not commutative. Clamping is a hard limit on what can come out of the component. So if you put a 10 in here, then no matter what the sum result of the two elements are, it will, if it's greater than 10, the component will substitute the output for 10. Right? Again, this all sounds obvious, but if you don't know what clamping is, it's helpful to know what clamping is, because you can use that. For example, I'm going to use how about I demonstrate as I go here, guys? That might be helpful. Right, so what I'm going to do, we're going to put a text display over here. Right, we're going to take an addition block and a memory block. And you guys might recognize this one from yesterday. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to change that yet. We're going to use 2 buttons. There's a button. There's a button and a button. And what we're going to do is we're going to say signal out to here. And remember, I don't know if you guys caught this yesterday, but buttons are what are called impulse outputs. So they produce, when you click them, they produce, actually I'm going to put that there. When you click a button, it produces a 1 for exactly one of those 60 frames per second. And after that, it stops producing 1s. It doesn't produce a 0, it just doesn't produce a 1 anymore. Actually, oh man, I'm all over the map here. Hang on. So we're going to put the 1 into the other guy, and we're going to put the other 1 into this guy, and we're going to say, your target signal's a 1. Don't do anything when you don't get that target signal, but when you do, output a -1. And I'm going to add this to the same signal in port of the adder block. Stop me if I lost you guys, because this is one of the most important circuits that you will have in your efforts as to build custom circuits. So we're going to put the results of the output into the memory block, okay? And then we're going to put the signal out back into that addition block, right? And then we're going to take this output and we're going to stick it over here and we're going to connect it to the set text, and we're going to give this memory block an initial value of 0. Are you guys still with me on this? Oh, I think Odin, Texas left. It must not be that exciting. Oh, hang on. I think are my captain and whatever his name is, assistant, are they still out in the water? My spawn points. Oh, they're inside. Okay. You still have an excellent connection. I think you get it so far. Okay. So what's going to happen here? Whenever I press this button here, it goes up. Over here, you'll notice it's going up slowly but surely, right? And whenever I pull this down, it goes to 0, and then it goes from -4 to 4. You guys see that? Yes? No? Maybe so? 99, 100. Now I'm going to clamp these to 0 and 10. I don't know if you guys can hear my mouse clicks here, but I can't get that any higher, right? And that won't let it go any lower. Right? What else can I show you guys that are super useful circuits? I'll show you a quick one just because you guys have been sticking around and you've been putting up with some pretty bland material here. I'm going to put an auto door just in the middle here because it doesn't matter if it's connected to anything. I just want the door. Can't hear the mouse clicks, but I get it. Oh, really? Okay, mouse clicks are good. Auto door. Okay, so this is just your standard door. Okay. We're going to rewire this to be a motion sensing door. Hang on here. We need cabinet. Oh wait, no, I think I have in my assemblies. Do I have smart door? I thought I had my little assemblies. Hang on. Okay, we're gonna make a storage thing here. Storage container. Open it. We're gonna put in here. We need an OR component. We need an OR component. We need an AND component. We need a signal check. 2 water detectors. Oh, that's white wire. 2 water detectors. And a light. Where's my light? I'm going to show you guys how to wire up that door again. Light component over here. And we need a shit ton of wires. So I don't think we need that many, but 2 water detectors or component, non-component, and component. Motion sensors already going to be in the door. Oh, I want a switch and a relay. Relay and a switch. Now, the problem with this door, the only problem with these doors, among other things, is that they have a 3-second timer that requires no motion in their range before the door closes. Right? So we still with me? Okay. If I stand here in the doorway, as long as I'm moving, that door is not going to shut. But I'm going to stand here and start wiring something. 2, 3, is it not going to, oh, it's got to, anyways. Maybe it's not going to shut. Anyways, if you want to wire something with a motion detector and whatnot, you might need to prop this door open. Or let's just say you want to run a really long wire around the sub, right? But you can't if you've got a, where's my wires? Oh, in here. And all this, we don't need, we will need this, we don't need this. We don't need this, and we want this, and we want one of these. Put these in here for now. This in here. Okay, and then we can put this down. So let's just say I want to wire this button to something over here, right? Your route requires a screwdriver in one hand and a wire in another. Right? Now we can't go anywhere, and I can't click that button without dropping a node that I might not want. Right? So what I like to do is wire switches on the doors and prop them open as I go. Right? We can put this switch here. Oop. Put that switch up there. But if we wire the switch to this door, if the switch is off, right, we can't open that door no matter what, because we push this button, it's going to close the door automatically. And if this door is open, the same thing applies, we can't close it. Well, if the door is open, hang on. Right, no matter what happens, that's a platform at the bottom, isn't it? That's what's going on. That water will not be blocked. And on a submarine, if you can't contain the water on a leak, that's a flirting with a watery death. Right? That's not necessarily a good thing. So you need a way to open this door and let it close when you want it to close, and not have it. You don't want to have to rewire this door if the shit hits the fan and you need to close this door. Right? You don't want to have to run around and close this door, and you want people to be able to leave and move about freely when there's an emergency on the other side of the door. And if you have propped this door open with a switch, your team's going to hate you because it's just not safe. So what you can do is wire the sub to a switch and wire the switch through the relay to the door to set state. But then you're also going to add another connection from here to the relay to the set state port. And what that does, when the switch is on, the door will not close. But when the switch is off, the door can open and close freely. Why? Because when the switch is off, the off signal from the switch itself is being received by the relay and turning the relay off, therefore interrupting the same off signal that would otherwise hold the door shut. Does that make sense? Stop me if you've heard this. Tell me if it doesn't make sense. Either way. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, yay! Somebody gets it, at least one. Yes, makes sense. Okay. All right, where were we on the components list? We talked about addition, we talked about clamping, we talked about non-numeric signals being received. And as hopefully, I don't know what you guys know about logic. We talked about this. You have to have two true inputs to the hang on, and put that there. Open it up here. You need to receive two true inputs on each, one on each of these signal ports, in order for the true output, which is either defined here in the output or here in the set output. You need two true inputs in order to get a true output, what I call the true condition output. Those true inputs do not have to be 1 or 0. It has to be 0 or anything that's not 0. So 0, pardon me. Anything that's not 0 is interpreted logically as a 1. You will also notice that there is no false output by default with AND components. This is an important thing to understand, because when you're doing your Booleans, when you're doing logical stuff with ANDs and ORs and ifs and XORs, I know there's no if block, but the point is that when you're working with logicals, it might not be intuitive how they behave when it doesn't produce a false output. So if it's not behaving the way you want, add a 0 here and see what changes. Okay, what else do we have? Let me start cranking through these, because the people in my household are starting to wake up, and I'm usually the one who cooks breakfast. So we talked about cosine and arc cosine, which is, just to recap, cosine spits out a fraction that is representative of an angle, proportional to an angle that it receives, and if you put the same fraction or decimal value into the arc cosine, it spits out the angle that you would have put into the cosine to get the same fraction. Same with sine and arc sine. If you put an angle into sine, you get a fraction. If you put in that fraction into arc sine, you get the same angle that it would spit out. Atan is a little bit more unique. Arctangent. So tangent is opposite over adjacent, so it's your y component divided by your x component. So if you have a vector and you want to know the angle, for example, just for an example, let's say we have a turret. There's our machines, right? You want to calculate the angle to say something over. I'm just going to put something up here because I need something. Okay. So let's just say you want to auto target something with your turret, right? If you have the means of recording, like the actual angle goes from here to here, right? But you don't have any means of detecting this angle manually. But you can, with the clever arrangement of motion detectors, you can determine how far it is in this distance, right? Which would be about 2.81. And you can figure out how far it is in this distance, which would be 3.17, right? So let's just say you've got some clever arrangement of motion detectors that tells you that, what was it? 2.92 and 3 meters here. Okay, and we need to turn that into an angle for this turret to receive. So first things first, we need to understand that the angles for these turrets is entirely 100% backwards to what the convention is everywhere else. So if you were to draw a circle here and follow where 0 to 360 degrees go, in engineering and mathematics and physics and everything else, it starts along the parallel with the x-axis is 0 degrees. And then as you move around that axis, so this would be 90, 180, 270, 360, right? As you move counterclockwise, that's how the angle increases, right? In barotrauma, it's the opposite. So if you start at 0 at the x-axis and then you move clockwise, and that's the 0 to 360 degrees. So if we have this angle, right, and we put in the arc, if we want to get this angle here, even if we use the arctangent to get that angle, we have to do 360 minus that angle to get that result. So, do I have a scientific calculator on here? Trigonometry, there we go. Okay, so what did we say? We said, can you guys see that? Yes, you can. Okay. We said this was alt 2.78 and, 2 point something, hang on. 3.07 and 2.35. So, opposite, which is 3.27 divided by 2.05, if I remember those correctly, is 1.59512. Put that into, where's atan? Second. Tangent number 1, you get 57.91 degrees, right? If we take, what is that? So, times -1. Oh, what was that? That was, I can't use my numpad like I normally would because I've assigned a whole bunch of OBS hotkeys to it. Second tan of, nope. It's 57.915 negative plus 360. So 302.8. Let's see what happens. 302.8. Go back to this one. And we're going to go into here. We're going to go to our turret controls. And we're going to say the minimum. Oh. We're going to say 302.8. And 302.8. pretty damn close. So my point with all this is that if you open up the A10 component, whereas in the A sine component you have electronics here, A sine or A cos. If you look at this, you've only got the signal in, the signal out, because if you put the fraction in, you get the angle out, right? But with A10, you remember where I calculated that ratio between the y component and the x component? With the A10 component, you can feed that x and y components in directly, and it will automatically calculate the angle without having to calculate that fraction separately. So it saves you a step, and then that spits out the angle that would come from the x and the y components. So that's A10. So now we're up to A10. Next one up is I want to talk about the button. It's technically not a wiring component, but I want to talk about the button versus switch. So a button is what you call an impulse output, and the switch is what you call a toggle output. So if you look at the outputs of these, if you were to click them each 3 times, whenever you click the button, you get, for 1/60th of a second, because that's the update speed of the data network, you get a 1 for exactly 1 frame. And then after everything that is connected to has processed its signal and those things, and the 1 has carried out its effect, then it's turned off, and for the next iteration through the cycle. A switch, on the other hand, is it stays on or stays off when you click it. So if you were to click a button 3 times, you would get 3 pulses of 1 separated by whatever the distances are between your clicks. Or when I say distances, I mean durations between the clicks, time elapsed. If you were to put 3 clicks into a switch, it would turn on, it would turn off, and then it would turn back on again. Right? So at the end of it, it would be on and staying on, whereas the switch is off and staying off until you push it again. That's switches versus buttons. The switches and buttons both have an output of 1, and the switch has a false output of 0. The button produces no output when it's not being clicked. That's important. You can't modify those signals like you can in like an OR component, right? You can go in here and you can look at the properties and you can change the output manually. They can do this in the campaign too. You can change the output and the false output by hand, right? But when you have a switch or a button, you cannot change those manually. But you can feed them into a signal check component. I'm going to skip ahead to the signal check component because it is probably one of the most handy ones to have. So if you put a target signal in here of 1 and like a 4, let's just say -4 and a 4, right, and a 5 or whatever. I'm gonna put that into a display. Hang on, it displays up here, don't we? I'm very happy that my chat's not going down because I'm using the escape key. That was embarrassing. So we're gonna wire this output straight into the text display. And then we're gonna put both a button. Where's my switch and the button? There is a switch. And where is my button? Take this to signal in. Take this. I will leave that there. We'll wire it again later. Okay, let's test this out. 4 viewers. Holy cow, we've doubled our population, boys. At this rate, we'll have millions in here in about 10 minutes. Because exponential growth is a thing, right? And I put that button out of my own reach. Oh my goodness, boys, what's going on with me? Pete's sake. Anyways, what I expect to see here is that even though the button is not producing an active signal, the signal check component is going to change that inactive signal to whatever we put as the false output because it's not receiving what it would interpret as the true input. So that's the difference between switches and buttons. You know what? I want to test that. I actually do want to test that because wait a minute, did they change that so that it didn't it replaced itself with haha. Pop quiz. I was saying earlier that if you delete a wiring component and then undelete it, the connections going to it or any other device that it was connected to, right, are broken. But when I delete these collectively, they come back together. Can anybody tell me why? And if you haven't been here for the whole stream, it might be more difficult. But can anybody tell me why it works that way? If you know why, say in the chat. So we talked about time frame. We talked about persistence of signals. So when you send a 1 to the signal input, that the last signal received from here will be 1. And this cannot be overwritten with a blank signal. Suggestion: audio stream's current bitrate is lower than recommended bitrate. Do you guys have audio? YouTube says you don't. Anything, guys? The fact that nobody's saying anything has me worried. Oh, yes, we hear me. Okay, good. So, if there's a 0 received by this port, we do have audio. Excellent. Thank you. AS. I don't know where everybody is. I know Sean is in Australia. I know Streamy is in... Hang on. He said CET, Central European. Did you tell me where you are? I don't think you did. Anyways, I'm in Canada. How's it going, eh? So anyways, you can't overwrite an existing signal with a blank signal. And when you have a switch between button presses, it's a blank signal. So even though the signal check component has a target signal of 1, it's not receiving anything else on the signal input until you replace that with another signal. So my demonstration of what would happen when you push this button versus when you click the switch would not have worked. I did not tell you, but the flag is blue and yellow. Ukraine? Is that the Ukraine? I'm not going to look it up. I really, really want to, but I'm not because you guys are here for Barotrauma. You're not here to see my fun with flags. No, it's not Ukraine. I could have swore I see. We have a lot of this whole thing going on in Ukraine is a big deal up over here, and so there's a lot of companies having flags in the window. And I could have swore it was blue and yellow. Oh, you're saying it's not just blue and yellow? The colors on the flag are blue and yellow. Northern country, Scandinavian. Norway, Finland, or Sweden? Sweden, I think, is red, red, and white. Finland? Sweden. Ah! Oh, man. Okay, Sweden. Was it Sweden that we sent this maple syrup to a couple of Olympics back? There's a funny story in Canada about how there was a biathlon, and for those of you who don't know, biathlon is skiing and shooting, and the sticks is cross country skiing. It's not downhill skiing. It's cross country, which means the sticks are pretty important. Well, the Canadian competitor broke his stick, and the other competitor, whose country I can't remember off the top of my head, gave him one of his sticks, and he wound up placing 4th, I think. And it was such an amazing sportsmanlike thing to do that in return we sent their country after the Olympics a metric ton of maple syrup, because that's how you repay people with favors, is with high fructose corn syrup. So, anyways, that was a pretty beautiful moment. I'm pretty sure it was a Scandinavian country that did it. But Sean, good job, Sweden. Did you Google? Be honest. Did you have to Google that? Either way, okay. Sounds very Canadian. The maple syrup. Yeah, apparently I lived in the States, and they were like, "Y'all got such a strange accent. You must be Canadian." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, it's me with the accent." And they made fun of me for saying Z instead of Z, but that's okay. Anyways, so we talked about A10, A sign. We talked about the button versus switch. Okay, ceiling. Okay, the ceiling component. So there's round, floor, and ceiling are all very similar to each other. Let's see. We're gonna take the ceiling. Where's the round? Round's around here somewhere. There's a round component and the floor. Where's floor? Floor component. It's Z, not Z. Exactly. And unfortunately, Canadians, they say aluminum like the Americans, which is silly because I believe the proper term is aluminium, and it was a typographical error um, from a transatlantic um, telegraph, and the guy who transcribed the telegraph didn't put the I in, and now forevermore the Americans will say that it's properly pronounced aluminum. That is why Americans say, and Canadians unfortunately say, aluminum, and the rest of the world says aluminium. The more you know. All right, guys. So here's the way it works. Let's just say we're going to put a decimal value into this. And we're going to see what comes out. I think this one's the best described with the demonstration. So we're going to put this over here. Oh, nope. Why would that not have worked? Does anybody know off the top of your head why that connecting the set text to the text the signal in? Because they're both inputs. And connecting an input to an input, it does nothing. So we're going to set this to 0. And when we start this test, they will all equal 0. Oh, Mr. Door still there. We've got 4 people still. Welcome and congratulations all. If you're not subscribers yet, please subscribe. It helps me justify all this time to my girlfriend. So let's just say point 3. You will see that they all equal 3. Right? Let's put 3.14159. Now, what happened here? The ceiling component takes any decimal value, and if the decimal component is higher than 0, it rounds up to the next integer. Okay, so it takes the ceiling of the range within it. If you take the round component and put in a decimal value, if the decimal component is greater than 0.5, greater than or equal to 0.500000, it will round up to the next integer. If not, it rounds down to the next integer. If you put the same decimal value into the floor component will remove any decimal component that's not equal to 000. So if you put a 3.49, not 349, 3.49, right? Your round component is still rounding down, your floor component always rounds down, your ceiling component always rounds up. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. If I put 3.5, now the round component's rounding up, the ceiling component always rounds up, and the floor component always rounds down. Right? We could put 3.999999, and that floor component is always going to round that down. Right? If you've got, but as soon as you get to 4, they're all going to be 4 because it's an integer. But if I put 4, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, oh, too many zeros. Right? The round component's rounding down, the floor component always rounds down, and the ceiling component always rounds up. As soon as that goes back down to 4, even though the change is minuscule, the ceiling function always rounds up. Clear as mud? Everybody get that? All 4 of you? Yes, no, maybe so. I'm liking this live stream thing. It's a lot less work than the video editing. So where were we? We've done ceiling component now. Color components. All right. So the color component does something very interesting and very, very useful. So we're going to take this. Actually, no, you know what? I have EK mods. We're going to put a text. I'm going to put the long text display over here because we're going to need it. If you don't want to take up keyboard shortcuts for you, consider getting a Stream Deck. Yeah, dude, I'm running a GL703 laptop. It's like 6 years old. I've upgraded the RAM and I've put in an NVMe SSD. So I've upgraded as pretty much as far as I go. And if you guys can't hear that, hang on. It is it's a screaming right now. I don't know if you guys can see this. Hang on. All I'm doing is running Barotrauma, Chrome. I've GIMP opened up. I got OBS Studio and Visual Studio Code. Not what I would call processor intense processes or resource intense processes, but nonetheless, come on, you can do it. We're running at 89 degrees on the core. Holy crap. And I've got that thing on a cooling fan and whatnot. I've cleaned it out so many times. I don't know how many times I've opened this thing up. It's just old. So if you hear a high-pitched whining in the background, that's me complaining that I don't have a newer laptop, plus the fans on the laptop. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to put memory blocks here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make this 10. Do I still have? Yes, I do still have that excellent connection. All right. Sorry, guys. These are all going to be ugly as snot. I really wish that they were prettier, but this should get the job done anyways. So I don't know who here is familiar with RGBA, but RGBA means red, green, blue, and alpha. Alpha is opacity. In this case, it's translucence. Signal out. It goes to here. So RGBA uses 2-byte values. We're gonna put this on here, which means 2 bytes is 2 hexadecimal characters. So you can do FF or whatnot, or each of them from 0 to 255. Right? We're gonna say on because I don't want to have to put a switch on this, and why not say draw shadows? So we're going to set this to 0, 0, 0. I can do 0 for all of these at the same time, but that's okay. 0 and 0. So who can tell me what color this is? Before we go any further, I'll save this because my computer sounds like it's about to crash. What color is 0, 0, 0, 0 in RGBA? Nobody? Hang on here. Why is this not? Did I connect this to the input? I'll bet you I did. I did. Telmet Tenacity says black. You are very close. It's a trick question. With a 0 or alpha, it's nothing. So 0, 0, 0 in red, green, blue is indeed black, right? And white would be the maximum of all 5, which is 255 and 255. Right? I put a apostrophe in there, which turns into a string array, right? And this is 255, which is also white, right? Those three all by themselves would be white. However, with an opacity of 0, it is also no color, right? So if I change this to 255, boom, we get a white light. That's a very dismal white light, but you get the idea, right? If I change this to 128, it's half the intensity. Man, that's hard to see. So hang on, I'm going to return our background so it's easier to see what's going on, and I'm going to make this a little bit more of a, yeah, call it 100. It's the default value, probably good for a reason. Put this back in here, turn this down to here, start this here. Okay. So, as you can see, the color component takes these signals. You gotta delete that door, it's gonna give me a tumor, right? Oh, wait, it's not the 0 value that I did wrong, it's the wiring that I did wrong. Hang on here. So we put the, okay, so we get 0, 0, 0, 0, okay? No matter what the input is to this set color input, as long as it's a value above 0, it's going to have some intensity, and above 255 has no effect. If you were to put 1000 and 0, 0, 0, 0, you'd still get the same red that you would get if you put 255, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? So that's white if you were to put in here in 255. So 255 should be red. However, with an opacity of 0, once again, we have no color. It's completely transparent, 255, right? If we change this to 100, right, it's still red, just not as red as it would be if it was 255. But, and this is, I think, if I remember correctly, this is where the color component really starts to demonstrate its usefulness. Because even though that red doesn't change, because it's capped at 255 for the alpha, the color component doesn't care, and it still concatenates the value 10,000 to the end of this string. Which means you can use this to join very different signals, except they all have to be numeric, right? You can do this and you can say 0.245, right? You can take this one, you can say -4, right? The color component concatenates them into a 4-number array. So they have to be numeric inputs, otherwise it just sends a 0. Right? If I were to change this back to ABCD. No, whoops. I hate this keyboard. It just puts out a 0, right? It wants something other than letters, right? But the point is that if you're doing regex operations, if you need to move information, like if you want to somehow store or use different values, normally you would need to have 4 concatenate blocks to create a signal like this, right? You can modify the concatenate block. Like, hang on, I'll show you what the concatenate block does, because I believe it's next. The concatenate block takes 2 signals and appends them to each other. Hang on, we're gonna get rid of this door. Hang on, not the background, just the door. Okay. So the concatenate signal, here we go. The concatenate block looks like this on the inside. It's signal 1 in 2 and signal in 2. Did I just delete my background? No, I didn't. That one transparent. So if I were to wire this one here, over here, signal in 1, and signal in 2. Fix this while I'm here. And then set this one here. Do we still have 4? We do still have 4. Put this in here to signal in 2. Connect signal in 1 to signal out 1. Right, and concatenate these. And now we're going to want here, right? And when we open these up together, we see that there's a separator value, so we can put a comma in here. And now whenever it joins those 2 things together, it puts a comma in between them. Now, this one, right, has the advantage. The only benefit here is that whereas if you were to put an A, B, C, D here in this value, the color block being requiring only numeric inputs ignores the A, B, C, D, whereas the concatenate blocks, which assumes everything comes in as a string, will save the A, B, C, D as part of the array. However, usually when you're moving these values around, it's only numbers that you care about, and so to concatenate 4 signals with a single block, you would use a color component. Whereas if you want to do the same thing with concatenates, you need 3 of them. Is that clear as mud, guys? Okay, I'm just gonna move on. Let's call this turn to editor. Save. We're gonna call it clear. Good. Okay, we'll save that there. Pretty clear. Oh, is that what you're saying? I could do better? Is that what's going on? Okay, so that was concatenate and that was a color block, both at the same time. Look at that. We're just making good time here, boys. It's only been an hour. Okay, cosine, we've already talked about. Delay. Okay. Delay is easy peasy. Whatever signal comes in the signal input is passed through to the signal output after whatever delay you've set here in seconds. You can define the delay dynamically with the set delay box. If you put a 0 or a string array arrives at into the signal set delay input, if it receives a 0 or any string, then that sets the delay to 0, and you get an immediate output from whatever it goes from here to here. This is a universal input. It does not interpret it as numeric, logical, string, whatever. It takes this signal and passes it to the signal output unprocessed. Okay? There are two options here. You can say reset when any signal is received. So if you get a pulse input here that's 4, it'll start the timer and say before that one timer is over, another impulse of 4 arrives. Then that timer resets. I don't know how that would be useful, but I'm sure in some situations it might be. And the other one is reset when a different signal is received. So if a 4 comes in and that one timer starts and another signal, say like a 5, comes in before that timer's up, that 4 never gets broadcast, right? That never comes out here because it resets when a different signal is received. If anybody wants more questions on that one, how do you, situations that you can use the delay block? I want to, yeah, I'm trying to remember, like, I want to remind myself that you guys should see what these things do and different things. You don't just want to know how they work, you want to see them work. So we're going to put an oscillator. Okay. Put that through a relay. And put that relay on. Oh, hang on. I did this before where I put things out of my reach. Put that relay on a switch. All right, so we're going to take the signal out to here. And we're going to put set state. Put signal out here. It's going to go to signal in 1. Okay, now I'm going to add a bunch of blocks over here. They're not entirely necessary, but what happened earlier was that I tried to display the output from the oscillator, and the oscillator was using a sine wave that was going from 0 to 1, but you couldn't read it on the text display. And the reason that happened is because the text display was trying to update like 12 decimal points at the same time. And by the time it was done updating, another calculation had been done. Where's the division block? There it is. Show you guys a quick little trick that I use all the time on my displays. And when I say quick, I mean the other thing. Where's my round component? Where's my round component? Okay. And I want to put my exponent here. Where's my exponent component? There is that. And a memory block. I'm going to put this here. Okay. What am I trying to do? Okay. So I'm going to put a 10 in here. This is going to go into the signal import. No, it's going to come out of the signal import of the memory block into the signal in. And the signal out is going to go to both the multiplier, signal out. That's going to go into the round. I want somebody to guess what this does. I'm going to say this is for 3 for now. So who can guess what this arrangement does? Let's just look at it here as signal in, okay? This is a 10. Goes into here and becomes 10 to the power of 3. Okay? It's 1,000. This multiplies the incoming signal by 1,000, rounds it to the nearest integer, and then divides it by 1,000 again. So what's that going to do? Well, what that's going to do is that's going to eliminate our problem of 12 decimal places. It's just going to truncate that to 3 decimal places, because it's just say you have 3.14159, you multiply that by 1,000, you get 31415, right? And then you round that, and all the other decimal places go away, and you divide it by 1,000 again, you get 3.141. Yeah, that's how that works. So yeah, so what this is going to do, I think we're going to leave this in, set this to like 5, so we have something nice and slow. I'll put this as a sine wave for now, but we're going to do some here in a sec. So basically what that little circuit does is it truncates that to, wait, oh, that's 5 frequency. Okay, 0.2. So sine wave, I said 0 to 1 earlier, didn't I? Sine wave goes between 1 and -1. Right? So let's change this to 0.1. So this should go from 1 to -1 over the course of 10 seconds. Right? So if I make this a triangle wave, right? Is going from 1 to -1 at linear rate. So this graph would look like triangles, which is why it's called a triangle wave. Let's say I want to calculate a rate of change. I want to do calculus, right? We're going to... Calculus is change in value over change in time, right? So let's just say we need a delay, we need a subtraction block. Where's my subtraction block here? I always lose it. Okay, and we need a division block. And we need to know this frequency, but we do know it's hang on. You know what? We're going to set something here. We're going to put another oscillating block here. Okay, yeah, this just got a little bit more complicated because I want to do calculus, but not infinitely so. Need one more relay. And we're going to say signal out to here. We got 4 computers. We keep getting people come in and go, nope, this is boring, and then they leave. All right. If you guys see what I'm doing, we're going to do set state. And we're going to call this say 25. Okay, that's this one, 25. No. Yes, 25. Those people don't know what they're missing. Okay, so we're setting a frequency. We're going to have a pulse output here of 25. Right, and then we're going to... Basically what this is doing is interrupting the signal from here to here. Okay? This one we can still use to control the flow. Right? And then... Oh, hang on here. I'll put this up here. And I'm going to need another exponent block over here. And we're going to make the exponent -1. You know what? That oscillator is not necessary if I'm right. Because I'm going to delay this. Yeah, that's what... Okay. This whole thing was unnecessary. I apologize for the extra confusion that comes out of this. I was making things more complicated than they have to be because I forgot that you can... I was doing this from memory where you did before the set delay input was there, which wasn't actually that long ago. So I put this here, and then I'm going to go get rid of these blocks. Come on. All right. Okay. So this is going to be our update frequency. We're going to say value of 25. Okay. Oh, I'd have to do the same thing. Oh my goodness. You can tell I haven't had any coffee this morning because I'm really doing silly math here and it's not making sense. So The derivative, or calculus, the rate of change, is change in value over change in time. So let's just say we want to update this 25 times per second. We've already set our exponent to -1, which divides it. Set delay. And here we say signal out here to this. Okay? So, take this value here. We're going to bring it into the delay block. And take the same value here and bring into the subtraction block. All right. And then we're going to take the output of the delay block and subtract that from the incoming signal. So what this does is this divides the current value, or sorry, subtracts the current value. Sorry, this subtracts the previous value from the current value, which is your change. Right? The change in your signal is whatever change it did in the last iteration, or since the last update. Right? So then we divide that by the time delay that we added between our measurements. Right? So now we have rate of change divided by change in time, which is your first derivative. Right? So what is the derivative of a triangle wave going to look like? Anybody have calculus in their background? You can use this, you might not find this useful, but you can use this for like auto brakes. I have an auto brake circuit that I've used where it's like if the sub detects an imminent crash in front of itself, it puts the brakes on as fast as possible in the event that it's approaching something too fast. 20 years ago. What? Oh, 20. Yeah, don't worry, Tolman. I'm 38 right now, so it's that was high school a long time ago. I hated calculus. But the fact remains, it is useful in some situations, right? So basically, if you have a graph, the derivative of your curve is the slope of that curve. If you have a triangle wave, slope is constant, right? Constant, and then it switches to negative, and then it switches to constant, positive again, but in both cases it's negative. So, if I've done this right, and I believe I have, we should see our triangle wave here, and we should see the slope here. And the slope should be a constant value that switches from positive to negative halfway through each cycle. Now, the value of that slope depends on how fast it's changing. And the speed of that triangle depends on our frequency input. So I'm going to put this over here. And we're going to say this is a triangle wave. We set to 0.1. So that means set this to 0.1. I put this in here as the change signal output. Set frequency. Okay, so if we go from -1 to 1 and back at a constant rate over the course of 10 seconds, which is what a frequency of 0.1 is, then your slope is going to be from -1 to 1, which is 2, and half of that is 5. What's 2 divided by 5? 0.4? 2 divided by 5. 0.4, right? So I predict, and I've never built this circuit before, so this is entirely off the top of my head. I predict that we're going to see from -1 to 1 down here, and we see -4 to 4, or -4 to positive 0.4 down here. Let's see what happens. Let's make it happen, Captain. Oh wait, is this can we do higher than this? 30? Right? it wasn't getting to 0.4 because it wasn't updating fast enough, right? But now that we've increased this, we can't get this too high because you got Nyquist theory. You got to have double the sample rate as your measurements. But anyways, does that make sense, guys? How we use the subtraction block and the delay block together here to calculate the rate of change. All right, if I stretch this out to 0.05, we should see that slope down to 0.2. Why didn't that change? Oh, that's because this isn't doing anything. There we go. This is 25. If we do this to 30, yeah, 0.2. Clear as mud, guys. It wasn't the division. It was the memory block. I'd somehow put. I was moving away from the block, and so I was using keyboard commands, which means those were saved as the inputs, which was S and A. All right. So that's the subtraction block, and the oscillator, and the relay block, and the division and the round and the exponent. So we're making good time, I think. So let's return to editor. How long are we doing? We're at 1:54. It's 2 hours. Okay, we're gonna have to call this pretty soon because I'm pretty sure my girlfriend's getting hungry. Where were we? Division delay component. We've already talked about. Division component should be obvious. Equals component just compares two signals, and if they are equal to each other, then it sends the true output. What is that project? Which project? This one over here? Is this the one you're talking about? Seminella Sigi? I don't know if I'm getting serious lag or if he's just not answering the question. I always worry about lag. Can't even... More or less, what did I miss? Oh, well, I'm just going through all the components. One by one. We're talking about what they do when they receive various signals. This was supposed to be... If, like, this is gonna... When I'm done, this should let me choose between the different types of signals. So logical strings, blank zeros, integers, floating points, right? And what happens when you pump those into the various different components, right? Like if you put a string value into an exponent, it turns into a zero, right? If you put that into the base, right? So if you put, say, set your exponent to 2, right? And you put a string value that comes into the signal input. Because it's a numeric input, it interprets string values as 0. And so this becomes 0 to the power of 2. High school math question for everybody that's out there. If I were to put, say, a 4 into my base and send a string value into the set exponent, knowing that it's a numeric input, what would happen? What would my output be? I'll give a couple seconds to see if anybody can answer that real quick. Very nice. I guess I'll watch the live stream when it's done. Oh, you're not, stick around. You won't have to watch the whole thing later if you stick around for a bit. Plus, I like having number 5 instead of 4. So the answer to that question is 1. Because any number to the power of 0 is 1. And if you put a string value into the set exponent, it interprets that as a 0. So it turns the 4 to the power of 0 comes out as a 1. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's the exponent. Factorial is next, I think. Oh. Yes, factorial. So factorial is a rather obscure mathematical function. I've got all this saved, so I can delete this for now. Factorial is the product series or geometric series of all the integer value of the value pumped into it times all of the integers before it. So basically 1 factorial is 1. 2 factorial is 2 times 1, which is 2. 3 factorial is 1 times 2 times 3, which is 6. Right, so if we go here and we test this out. Statistics, actually very little statistics. It's more permutations, finite mathematics, right? So permutations and combinations. 4 is 24 because that's 6 times 4. 5 times 24 is 120. 6 times 120 is 7,200. Oh, 5,040. Right, so every time you go up, this number gets really big really fast. So much so, actually, that the I think this should marquee if I hit the same value. The game caps it at 20, and this is 2.43902 to the power of 18. And after that, the game says, yeah, the hell with that. I'm not doing that anymore. You could put a multiplier block in here and start multiplying manually if you want to get any higher than that. But the point is that that's factorial. So, moving on. Floor component, we've already talked about. Sorry, Sam and Ellen. The floor component, basically, you've got the floor, the ceiling, and the round. The floor always rounds down, regardless of what the decimal component is. Even if it's 9.999999, the floor component will always round that down to the previous integer. The ceiling component, on the other hand, always rounds it up. Even if it's 4.000001, it would be rounding that up to 5. And then round, of course, tips at 0.50. It goes up, and anything before that, it goes down. Hopefully that's clear. Greater than, possibly another one of the most important blocks in the game, especially since I use this on my 3-component reactor controller over here. It's not the 2-component. I only use a 2-component because sometimes at the beginning of the game it's hard to scrounge up the, especially if you're doing like a stupid, what's it called? The type of the hardest campaign. Ruthless? I think it's called Ruthless. You start with very little supplies, and you might not have enough to craft 3 components, and you need 2 components, which is why I have the video on the 2-component reactor controller. But for wiring and mental sake, it's easier to make a 3rd component and wire it this way than it is to fully understand the regex equation required for the 2-component controller. So just like the equation block, pardon me, just like the equation block, this is a comparator. So if the numeric magnitude of signal in 1 is greater than signal in 2, then the true condition is satisfied and the signal is produced. So this is your true condition output unless there is a signal coming into the set output port, in which case this becomes your true condition output. If the signal in 1 is not present or not the same, or sorry, not greater than signal 2, then your false condition output is what comes out of here, which is by default blank. Hopefully that one's clear because I'm just going to skip right past that one. Memory blocks. Okay, so memory blocks are fun because they store the last value that they received. Right, so if you have that triangle wave input, if you feed the triangle signal into a memory block and then interrupt the signal, hang on, is blank the same as 0? Absolutely not. That's a very, very important question, and I'm glad you asked. So a 0 signal can overwrite other signals, right? So if you have a 1 going into, say, the signal in port of an AND block or a greater than block, that 0 is considered in the greater than, and it's considered as part of the logical comparisons in terms of true and false. If you send the 1, that 1 will persist. So if you send a impulse signal to that AND component, you don't have to sustain it as long as nothing is coming in behind it to overwrite it. Right? So if you send a 1 with a button to an AND component, that 1 will remain on the channel that it was received on, so a signal in 1 or signal in 2, and it will stay there until it's replaced by something else. You can't overwrite that 1 with a blank signal. But you can overwrite it with a 0. Does that make sense? So let's put oh, it doesn't have an undo history, does it? Okay, that makes sense. Thanks. Okay. So we're going to put a memory block. We're going to put 2 memory blocks here. And we'll put a switch here. A text display out. Put text display out over here. So this one is text from this output. This output also goes to this input. This output goes to this input over here. Okay, I'm going to leave that on blank for now. Where's my wire? Okay, this is another very important block, the memory block, and it has some features that aren't fully understood. So we're going to put this one to 0. And you will see that the signal from this signal out port, where's my screwdriver? Right, this goes to the signal in over here and changes that value, right? And as long as that remains locked or unlocked, they will update at the same time. However, if you wire something from here into the locked state port, you can make changes to this one and they will not be reflected on the other block until you turn it on. I think that's on. Can't tell. Is that on? Yeah, it's by default off, I think, when you place a switch. So when the lock state is open, so if this is receiving a 1, you can change the value of the components. Okay, so say make this a 2000 or 0, I guess in this case, right? Those will update. If you lock it, so if it's connected to something and that something is sending a 0, you can no longer change the state of whatever's in there. Now, very, very, very important note, okay? By default, the lock state of the memory block is open. So you don't have to put a switch on it to let everything change. It'll store the value of the last value received when there's not something connected to the lock state, right? However, currently this is locked. I'm going to disconnect this here, right? So now we're in the original state where there's nothing attached to it. The state is now locked. I use the switch to lock it and it will stay locked until I unlock it. So it starts off with no signal, right? When there's no signal connected to it, it starts off open. And if there is a signal connected to it, that signal can open or close it. However, if you remove that signal, it will not by default return to the open state. It has to be opened manually after that point in time. Make sense? Yes, no. 5 by 5. Yes, good. Okay. That's the memory block modulus. Okay, I'm not gonna, well, yeah, I guess I can. This is another somewhat useful one because you can use it for, where's my text display here? Text display. Boom, boom, boom. So the modulus component is, if you may recall, hang on, so you have to be careful when you lock it. Yes, absolutely. Or it's not just careful, you could use that to your advantage, right? You can say, I only want to record this when this happens. And you can put a conditional like a greater than or equal to or something to find that condition and only open it when that condition is satisfied. Set modulus. So, what is 3 divided by 2? Pop quiz. Three divided by 2 is 1.5, right? However, in terms of another way to say that, yes, exactly, is 2 mod 1. So, 3 mod 2 is 1 remainder 0.5. No, it's 1 remainder 1. So if you divide 3 by 2, 2 fits into it once with 1 left over. So if you say 9 mod 2, it's probably an easier one to explain. 9 mod 2 is 4 remainder 1. Don't forget to feed my girlfriend. You're funny. So 3 remainder 2. Why is that 2? Oh, I've got this backwards, don't I? Modulus is 2. Because 3 and 2 does not go into 3. Okay, so this is going to be our input. And this is going to be our modulus. So, if you say 3 mod 2, it should be 1 mod 1. Or sorry, 1 rem 1. It's not mod. It's close, telmet. So, 3 divided by 2, or 3 modulus 2. So how many times does 3 go in? Does 2 go into 3 and what's left over? That's basically what it is. So if we say 9, mod 2, it's still 1. Because 2 goes into 9 4 times, and what's left is a 1. Let's try, say 23 mod 10. It's 3. Because 10 goes into 23 twice, and then there's 3 left over. If you were to say 27 mod 10, that's 7. Because 10 still goes into 27 twice, with 7 left over. 27 or 30 mod 10 is 0. Because 10 goes into 30 exactly 3 times with nothing left over. Alright. I want to try to rush through these last ones here because it's starting to get kind of lengthy. Talk to modulus, which is down here. Multiply should be necessary. Not component. The not component interprets any signal as its logical opposite. So if you were to take a memory block and put a second one in here, put text display over here. For now, we're going to say signal out to here, signal out to here, and put a wire on the ground. Four viewers still, and we lost Streamy. Okay. So right now, there's nothing coming out of this memory component, which is interpreted as a 0 here at the not component, right? And if we set this to a 1, it comes out as a 0, right? If we set this as a 4, it still comes out as a 0, right? So whatever the logical value of the signal going in, right? If we set this to A, B, C, D, that's a non-zero value. So logically, it's still a 1, right? It's still true. Now, I'm going to unwire this here. And we're going to unwire this here. Oh. And now I'm going to put this in here. And what's this going to do? If anybody can guess. What this is going to do, it's just going to convert whatever input it receives to its logical equivalent. Right? So basically, anything that's exactly equal to 0, the logical equivalent is 0. And anything that's not 0, the logical equivalent is 1. And so it converts whatever signal you put in here to a 1. That's what the not component does. It interprets the incoming signal logically and outputs the logical opposite of said signal. That's not. What do we got? OR. So this is similar to the AND component. It's got 2 logical inputs and 1 universal input. Oh, hang on. What happened to my OR component there? These, similar to the NOT component, both signal in 1 and signal in 2 are interpreted logically. If one or the other or both are evaluated as true, the true condition is satisfied and the true condition output is broadcast from this port. You can define the true condition output here and the false condition output over here, in-game or in the editor. But if you have a signal coming over here to the set output port, this value is overridden immediately. Now, if this signal changes and goes or is made blank or whatever, it's disconnected, the last value received by this port is retained here, and you must go back and change it manually if you want it to change. Otherwise, that the signal that comes in to the set output port is rebroadcast from the signal out port until unprocessed. Sorry. So whatever goes in here comes out here untouched, uninterpreted, just exactly the same as it went in. Give me a second, guys. I'm gonna blow my nose, but I'm gonna mute the mic before I do that. 1 sec. And I don't know, Kleenex in the room. That's fun. I don't know. I forget what this says in French. My girlfriend's French Canadian. I'm trying to learn French and I'm not doing great. Okay. So that's OR. Oscillator. Okay. The oscillator has 2 inputs. It has the frequency set point and the output type set point, and the signal out is determined by those 2. There are 5 modes. 0 through 4 are the indices. That's important. If it's in mode 0, that's the first. Sorry. The first output type is pulse, right? If you send a set output type here that's 1, even though it's the first one, you're gonna get sawtooth wave because this range indexes from 0, I believe. Sawtooth would be 1, sine, square, triangle. So a sawtooth wave is similar to the triangle wave, where it goes from -1 to 1. But when it reaches 1, it drops down to 0 immediately. There's no gradual descent. It goes 0, -1 to 1, down, -1 to 1, down, -1 to 1, down. So that's why it's called sawtooth, because it looks much more aggressive than the triangle wave. Sine wave is the wavy thing that everybody's come to know and love. And the square wave is exactly what it sounds like. It goes from 1 to 0, switching at the halfway point for every cycle. So for if you have a frequency of 1, so 1 cycle per second, you're going to get a 1 for the first half second and a 0 for the second half second. If you were to set this to 2, all right, so 2 cycles per second, you would get a 1 for a quarter second and get a 0 for a quarter second. And get a 1 for the next quarter second and a 0 for the rest of the cycle. So that's 2 cycles in 1 second, which would be a frequency of 2. And we've already covered. I'm not going to go into regex right now because that's a big sticky mess, and I think it's going to deserve its own video. But suffice it to say, regex, in a nutshell, takes a signal and runs it against this surge expression here. Now, regular expression is a big beast. You can do a lot of stuff with it, but it's outside the scope of this video for now. Let's just say you put in a search expression here. This signaling is tested against the search expression. If it's satisfied, if it finds what it's looking for, then the true condition output is broadcast from the signal out pin. If it doesn't find what it's looking for, then the false condition output is sent. If a signal is received by the set output port, like everything else, if the search expression is satisfied, the true condition output is broadcast, which in this case would be the set output port. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Talk about that more later. Okay, relay component. Fun times. The relay component has many inputs. So it has a unidirectional power connection. So power going in and power coming out that are connected or disconnected with the state of the relay. It has a limit of 1,000 kilowatts. Sounds like a lot, but not really. That's an oxygen generator or a fabricator and a deconstructor, not an engine. Some pumps, right? So, but the thing is that if you set the state to 0, that power does not get through. And the other thing about relays is that they are unidirectional. So if you have a signal in one going to the signal out one, you cannot send signals back up that line, or you cannot get outputs to go from out to in. It only goes from in to out. These sound like very clear observations, but you'd be surprised how easy it is to mix that up. We talked about the power going through the relay. These are two recent additions, the load value out and the power value out. So you can read the draw being placed on this relay with the load value out, and you can read the input received with the power value out. And I believe this doesn't have a repairable category, so you cannot damage. Yeah, I don't believe you can damage a relay component by overvoltage with overvoltage. So the difference between a set state and a toggle state port is once again the difference between an impulse input and a toggle input. If you use a button to the set state port, you can turn the relay on, but since the button can only generate ones and blank signals and cannot generate zeros, you cannot turn the relay off with a button if it's connected to the set state port. Toggle state port, on the other hand, is an entirely different beast. Every time it receives a 1, it flips from its current state to its other state, regardless of what the current state is. You can't control that with the toggle state button. So, if you have a button and you want to be able to turn things on and off, hang on, let's see if we got set this up. If we have a what is it? Relay? No. How am I trying to put this? Oh, the toggle. Okay. I'm gonna use just a lamp to explain this concept here, but it's gonna be the same regardless. So if you put a button, like I just said, if you put a button on this lamp and you connect it to the set state port, you cannot turn it off. You can turn it on. fun fact, you can take off the power requirement for lights and they'll turn on even if they don't have power wired to them. So if we put this into the set state port, right, we can turn this, lamp starts on, and we can't turn it off. Right, it don't work. Now if we rewire this, go to the toggle state port, we can turn that lamp on and off with a toggle signal. If you only want to turn the lamp off, you can use an AND block. Right, so if you want to give this button the ability to turn something off, but not on, first of all, let's clone this button here, and we're going to use an AND block. Right, and the AND block, if it receives 2 positive signals, so if this light is already, it doesn't have an output. Drat. Oh, that's what I was going to do. That's why I was looking at the relay earlier on, because you can put a relay in here. Right? And instead of controlling the lamp directly, connect the lamp to the state out of the light. To the set state. You connect this to the set state. And we're going to define this over here to have a 0 output when it doesn't get its true condition. Signal in 1 comes from here, the signal out port. Signal in 2 comes from the state out port. And then this one here goes to the toggle set state port. So what's going to happen when we flip the switch? I'm going to turn this off, by the way, because I don't think it needs to be on when we start. What's going to happen here, guys? What we have is a button. Uh-oh. Aha. I turn this on. I don't want to because it's interfering with my other button. There we go. We have a button that can only turn things on. And we have a button that's failing to do its job. Relay component should be out. Oh. I want this to be here. Oh, that's what I'm trying to do. Okay. And component, we want to send a 0. There. We have a button that can only turn things on, and we have a button that can only turn things off. And the button that turns things on essentially tests the state of the device that it's connected to, in this case, the state output of this relay. And it tests it with an AND component. It says, okay, is that true? The thing's on? Okay, am I getting a signal from the button? Yes? Okay, let's do this thing. And the thing it's doing is sending a 0 output. So even though it's the true condition output, it's a false signal and it turns the light off. Hopefully that made things a little clearer. It's the relay component. Where are we? Ah, yes. So the relay component can handle 5 inputs to any port. Right? So you can use the relay component to make 1 connection to 1 connection. You can make 5 connections to 1 connection, or you can make 5 connections to 5 connections, or 1 connection to 5 connections. Like, you can use the relay component to connect multiple devices to 1 input or 1 output. If you put 1 output, say from a greater than or from an addition block, and use the same output to go to the signal in 1 and the signal in 2, then now you can send that signal to 10 other devices just using the 1 relay block. And if you want, you can interrupt that signal all at the same time with something controlling the set state of this block. But you will see on a lot of vanilla subs, let's see here. There is a winter halter. If you look at the winter halter, get rid of the walls and the structures, you will see that down here right before these oxygen tanks, it's using relay blocks to demux the power signals going to the shelves and to the lockers, right? So 1 signal in, 5 signals out. Which is not what's going on over here. Open. There we go. All right. So where were we? Talking about the relay. Round component we talked about. Signal check we've actually talked about before too, but just because we got a couple newcomers, I'll touch on it. So signal check checks a signal against a target signal. So very much like the equals comparator, except this target signal can be changed dynamically. Although, I guess with the equals thing, it can do that now too. Ah, yes, the equals component interprets strings logically and numerically. So the difference between this thing and the equals sign is that this thing can interpret strings, and if you have two character strings that are coming in at the same time, it will tell you whether or not they match. And if they match, you can change the output and the false output, and you can even change the true output dynamically right here with the set output. Hopefully that makes sense, because I know I'm moving kind of quick. Sine, we've talked about sine and arc cosine. Square root should be obvious. Whatever you put in here comes out as the square root. Non-numeric values are assumed to be 0, and negative values produce no output whatsoever because the game knows that negative values do not have a square root. And thank God this thing doesn't work in the imaginary plane, because real and imaginary would be a giant pain in the ass. Supercapacitors. Recent change to these things. Batteries and supercapacitors, if you set their charge rate over 70%, they start taking damage continuously, proportional to how high above 70% they are set. So, I would recommend, if you have, where's the putting, because ships don't have a lot of supercapacitors, so you can put something relatively complicated in here and not worry about wasting a lot of time. Greater than, memory, signal check, and not. Never made this. I thought this up in bed the other day. Right, so if we've got oh, I need a Wi-Fi down here too. We still got all 4. Wow, you guys are troopers, hanging in there. Wi-Fi component signal out to the signal check, signal in. If we get a 1, we want a 69 here, and we want a 100 here. Entire signal 1. What am I doing? Hang on. Don't need these. Just give me these 3. Signal in, and then signal out goes as comparator. Wi-Fi 2. Signal right here is the charge percentage. No, we want set charge rate. Hang on. Charge percentage out. We'll need another memory block. That's what I'm looking for. And so you can define this here. You say, let's say once it falls below 90%, right? So I had to put that there as a placeholder. Set charge rate. So we're going back to this. Okay. So if our, mix that one up. There we go. If our supercapacitor charge, oh wait, hang on. What do we got? We got questions here. Oh, gotta go because it's dinner time here, but thanks for the stream and other videos. Cheers from Poland. Would have a supercapacitor charging one of your charge controllers, a dedicated power throughput for fabricators and deconstructors to help alleviate strain on the reactor, or not worth it overall, or a battery instead of supercap. That would relieve some strain on the reactor. However, if you're using the 3-component reactor control, it doesn't matter. The thing's so damn responsive that it's not going to hurt a thing. If you're a purist and you don't like my reactor controller, then you can probably, I'll convince you that it's superior anyways. But yes, if you want to do that, putting a supercapacitor between your reactor and the fabricators would buffer, because the load from the only load that is seen by the reactor in that case is the load from the supercapacitor being drained. So the fact that the fabricator drains it from the supercapacitor faster means that that speed is not seen by the reactor. Hopefully that answers any questions. Okay. So what have we done here? I'll give you a hint. We're going to put a button over here, and we're going to put it in the same channel as this switch. So you got signal out going into this Wi-Fi over here. You have the signal out here. I believe they're both on channel 0 by default. Oh man, I meant to put a turd or something in here. Hang on. Oh no! Oops. Well, at least I remember what I was doing. Give me a sec. Well, structures. Okay, so what do we have? We had a memory. We had switch. Here we had two Wi-Fis. Wi-Fi here and Wi-Fi here. We had the signal check component here. We had a grader component here. And we had a supercap. Okay. Wi-Fi here goes into the signal check. See if you guys are paying attention. Goes into the set output. Signal check in. No, it's not the set output. Okay, signal output here goes to set output here. Am I doing this right? Yes. Yes. Okay. I'll signal in here. And we're going to say 100 when there is a signal. And false output of 75. No, not 70, 69. Target signal is a 1. And then this signal out is going to be our recharging threshold. So we'll call this 90. Or 50. There we go, 50. And put that here, and then this one is going to be connected to the supercapacitor's charge percentage. And this one here is going to be set to the charge rate percentage. I'm going to connect this thing to a power supply. And then we're going to set this thing up over here. I'm going to put another one of these over here. We're going to set it to channel 1. And then we're going to set up something big and nasty. An autocannon. What a spinal autocannon. Spinal autocannon, spinal medium mouths, heavy regular gun. A heavy autocannon around here somewhere. Heavy autocannon. There we go. There's the beast. It's got this massive loader here, so we're going to put a couple of these on here. Because I'm pretty sure it chews through the I know this is unrealistic, but... So those are linked. This thing we're going to say is... it's power in from... Like I said, it's not pretty. And then we're going to put a Wi-Fi component over here. Connect it to the trigger in. Okay, so what do we have? We have a switch that sends a Wi-Fi signal. We now have a switch that sends a Wi-Fi signal over channel 1 to our turret, which is going to pound out some auto cannon shells. Let's see if we can find some auto cannon shells. Heavy. Auto cannon, ammunition box. Okay. Oops. Open. Boom, boom. So basically, I'm making sure that there's lots and lots and lots of ammunition for this thing, so that we can use it to charge. Don't choose through power fast enough to drain that supercapacitor to the point that we see a difference. We can increase the power requirement here because if I remember correctly, it's not that big. Yeah, power consumption of auto turret sucks. So we're gonna create this to 0. And what's this thing's capacity? 20,000 max recharge rate, recharge speed capacity. Let's call this half of this. Okay. You guys see what's going on here? Yes, no? And we're not going to have any light because we can't see outside what's going on. I am going to turn up the settings because I love the audio of these guns. It's pretty cool. Sound UI, sound volume. Okay, fly. Okay. So right now, what I should do is I put edit box so you guys can see what's going on here. So what I've done, where's my text display? What I've done is created a circuit that if this is our charge threshold. So if the value of 50 is tested, so here's your memory component, is tested against the supercapacitor charge percent. So if our supercapacitor charge is less than 50%, then this outputs, we don't have to put this, we'll put, also put 0. Okay, we can set this to whatever it is, but it's going to be overridden by the output of our signal check component, okay? Signal check component sends 100 when it gets a true signal and 69 any other time. So when this greater than component is tested against the supercapacitor charge rate, if the charge rate is less than 50, then the signal check component is sent to the supercapacitor's set charge rate, right? Now, a recent update said that if you charge these things at anything higher than 70%, they start to take damage. So we don't want to charge our supercapacitors higher than 70%, usually. There are, however, situations where you're going to want that extra charge percent, like if you're facing a really big problem like a Moloch or an Endworm, right? So what we've done is we've put a switch over here on channel. What we've done is put a switch over here on channel 0. And when that switch is active, right, comes out of this one, it goes into the signal check. When the signal check receives that signal, it changes the output from 69, which is 1 point less than our supercapacitors start taking damage, and sets it to 100%. So this is your battle stations button. Right, when this button is pushed, these charge capacitors are going to jump to 100% when they're less than 50% charge. See what happens. All right, so it says current charge rate is 69. See the way it starts taking damage immediately? Right, and it's slowly climbing. Yeah, see, 70%. Current charge rate is not too high. So let's, but if we set this to 100, right, that's not super fast. So goes our heavy autocannon. Right, we are slowly getting depleted here. But if we set this to 100, we're getting enough charge just fast enough. Hang on. Right, at 69%, I don't think we have enough charge to hit the same rate of fire that we do, because the supercapacitor is limiting the rate of fire of the autocannon, right? See the way it's going faster and faster and faster up here? Wait, I think that's 69. Oh, there we go. So when the charge rate drops, right, the speed of the gunfire gets limited. But if we have this turned up to 100%, right, now we have enough charge to fire this thing at its true rate of fire, right? But at the consequence of taking damage to our supercapacitor. Does that make any sense to our viewers? We're almost there, guys. We have almost gone through all of our components. We're at what, signal check now? Sine. Sine is the same as we talked about our cosine, subtract, supercapacitors, switch, tangent. We talked about terminals and text displays. I'm not going to call those wiring components. They're displays. Wi-Fi components. Okay, here we go. Wi-Fi components have a signal in, a signal out, and a set channel. So when you have two Wi-Fi components on the same channel, any signal in received by one is broadcast at the signal out of all the others. So if you have 5 or 50 or 100 components all on the same channel, then you can seriously bypass that 5 connection limit by using a Wi-Fi signal instead of just a hard 5 limit connection through wires. So if you have, but keep in mind, these things do have a range. They have a range of 20,000, I think it's 200 meters. So if you have a really big ass sub, you might need repeaters. And you can just have two Wi-Fi's on the same channel, one having a signal out going to the other one signal in. And that will double the range because it repeats the signal from the new broadcast point. These two are universal outputs and inputs. And nothing is processed. There's no limits. You can't clamp the signal. Whatever the signal is going in is the signal coming out on whatever channel is being received by the set channel, or if you've set the channel manually. There's a nifty little feature called link to chat, where anytime that this value changes, you can get it to update to your text window. So if you can say reactor condition at 5%, please shit your pants now, pardon my French, you can have that output broadcast to the chat window. That's entirely a thing that could happen. Okay. You can tell I'm getting kind of tired because I'm starting to curse. Hey, you might have heard the gaming dad contributing in there. Wi-Fi component, and last but not least, we have the exclusive OR component. So this is a logical comparator like the AND or the OR or the NOT components. However, the OR component is the closest cousin, which the OR component outputs the true condition if one or both of the inputs is evaluated as true. The exclusive OR component only outputs the true condition if one or the other is true, not both. That's the difference between the or and the exclusive or. The exclusive is exclusively or, never and. The or component is or one or two or both. Sorry, one or two or one and two. With the exclusive or, there's no and. It's either one or two. If there's both, there's no. It reverts back to its false condition output. Wow. Okay. Yeah. 32 components in a what are we, 2 hour? We're gonna be past 2 hour mark now. Does anybody have any questions? Questions from the room? Yes, no, maybe so. Guys, you have been hanging in there despite my ramblings for quite some time. If you have any circuits that you would like to know how to do, this is a good time to let me know, because if I can't do them now, I'll tell you about them later. However, I think we can safely say, if there's no other questions from the room, I'm going to switch over here. And I'm just going to switch this on to my own little gaming nerd intro here. And guys, I really appreciate you watching. Oh, wait, hang on. Are there any ways of building a sensor that can detect a hull breach and have a strobe or flash in the roof where the hull is damaged? Sure. Oh, yeah, that's a thing. My favorite and most used component. Ooh. Okay, in the room. Are there ways of building a sensor that can detect a hull breach and have a light or strobe where the hull is damaged? Yeah, you could do that. It'd be a lot of work, but you could do that. Okay. Let's open. Sorry, what's his name? Streamy. We're gonna beat up his Seawolf a little bit. So this guy's doing a fairly well designed sub. You can tell he's a little frustrated with the storage limitations of the other subs, because this guy has probably more storage components than he has anything else. But he's also combined his ballast with other living quarters, which is an interesting choice. I'm not going to judge. This poor guy's, I think he's got the suicide chair for anybody who's broken their legs. You just put him in the ballast tank in a wheelchair and say, "Nice loan you got. I hope you don't have to dive anytime soon." Okay, so let's put some. The thing that's going to happen, the only limitation to that circuit that you're asking for, is that you won't be able to put it on. Hang on. Sometimes a lot of people struggle to find tiny hull breaches from very minor damage, like a crawler scratching on the hull, with the helm console being the only clue as to where it is. Okay. That can be solved several different ways. First of all, I would recommend a monster detector over a leak detector, because then you can see the monster before you see the leak. Because there's also now this thing, what's it called? The handheld something monitor. Handheld status monitor, that's what it's called. So this thing, if you open this, this is a portable version of the captain's status monitor on the helm. Whoa, whoops, didn't want to do that. So let's take this thing, and we're going to take it in here, and we're going to drop it somewhere that the engineer can get to it. Here. Oh wait, that's not the engineering bay. The engineering bay is way back here. So I'm going to put this on the floor down here, Mr. Engineer. Test. Oh, I didn't put a battery in it. Damn it. Tiny laptop, hurry up, please. Oh, I haven't modified this one yet, have I? I think I have a different one that's already has a reactor controller built in, because it's nice to make demonstrations. It's not nice to have to fiddle with the reactor when you get started. So we're going to say Seawolf. I thought I had a modded one. Nope. Okay, well, we're just gonna make some modifications to this one real quick. Reactor controller. He's got this interesting selection of a multiplier. Divide component. We're going to turn off the nuclear reactor. Multiply. Divide. Memory. And memory. We're going to delete those. Okay. And then I did have the full controller in at one point in time with the docking interrupt and that sort of thing. We're not going to do that. We're just going to put this one, and where's the other one? Memory, this one here. Wire this one. I've done this one 1,000 times, so that's why I know how to do this real quick. If 5,000 becomes greater than the temperature out, we're going to set this to 5,000. 5,000 becomes greater than that, we're going to say set the fission rate to 100, otherwise set to 0. Set this in here to set fission rate. And then this one, if the load value becomes higher than the power value, we're going to set the turbine outputs to 100. Turbine output. I don't know where that's going. Okay. Where's the other one? All right. This should turn our reactor on as soon as we start up the sub, except for I think he left this without gas. Yes, he did. Here's a nice thing about my reactor controller. You can throw 4 fulgurium fuel rods in there and not have to worry about it. It will overheat briefly, but don't get upset. As soon as you turn it on, it goes right to where it needs to be and stays exactly where it wants to be. Okay. Where'd that reactor controller go? Aha. Where's the monitor? So this one, right? This is a handheld unit, right? You don't have the electrical view of the item finder. You only have the general status of the sub. But this thing tells you hull integrity at all of these points. Just a little "you are here" dot, right? Is this what you're talking about? When you say the helm console being the only clue to where it is? Okay. So my recommendation for the reason I would recommend a proximity sensor over a water sensor is that would only work if you put them all along the hull, and wherever there's a possible tiny crack, right? That's where you'd have to put the sensor. If there's no sensor, it would not pick up on the water because you can't. There's no such thing as a hull sensor. There's only a water detector, and the water detector, if it was on the crack, like so, technically speaking, you could put a single Wi-Fi component, and like a couple relays. You need hundreds of thousands of, if not, no. So what you would do? You need to narrow it down to the room is the best you could do. But you would put all the sensors in here and then connect them to the one Wi-Fi component. Whereas if you were going to do a motion detector, where's our motion detector? Mass sensor, motion detector, right? And set this up over here and put on a Wi-Fi component, right? And set this to something absurd like, say, I don't know if you can go to 3000. I've never actually looked. You can change these to be selective for monster. And say you set this to 3000 with an X offset of negative 3000. Right, so now you've got this big range. You can say this set by, that's 3000 is kind of crazy. Let's call it 2000. Call this 1000. Right, so now you've got this big old detector in this range over here. Well, I'm back. What did I miss? And why are we looking at my sub? I'm adding a monster detector to your sub. Right, so we can say, I think I have this on another sub. We'll call this, it's 1000 by, okay, so it looks like 1000 is our limit. So 1000 by 1000, we'll call this 500 by 500 with the negative 500 offset. We're talking about proximity detectors for monster alerts. Right, 5000, 500. And then we put another one of these here. That is 200. No, I said 250. Yep, 250 by 250. And then we need to take this down to 250. All right, so we have three. Did I not make a third one? Hang on. 500. Damn it, Shift Tab still doesn't work. It never has, but I apparently can't learn that. 500. 500. This one's going to be 1000 by 1000. Okay. So what we can do is we're going to eventually stack these on top of each other. But we're going to say, if this is, false output of 3, false output of 2, this is here, this is 0, no, this is a 1, no, 0, here. Why you? I'm gonna leave you guys hanging. Why do you look at my sub? So what I want you guys to think about what I'm doing here and what's right this here target signal is 0. We're gonna set these here to all produce a 1 and a 0. Actually, what the let's do this. We'll call this I've never built this before, so I'm doing this off the top of my head. And this one would be Have you guys figured out what I'm doing yet? Is it possible to make XY coordinates from motion sensors? Yes, it is possible, but it is arduous. So we're going to put, first of all, we're going to call this an assembly. We're going to save this as proximity sensor. Okay. Nine, and we'll put this over here. And we're going to flip these here. So this one is negative 1,000. This one here is negative 500. This one here is negative 250. Nine, 8. All right. Let's say uh-oh, what did I do? Yes. Streamy, you are correct. That is exactly what I'm trying to do. Where I just put that. Trying to do this in such a way that I don't need to reconfigure them always. Okay, so we're going to change this one to range X 1, say 750, range Y 250, detection offset 650. I'm really just spitballing this off the top of my head, so say 750, range Y 500, and negative 650. And then this one is, not just, I just change on that one. 750 across, 250 down, centered. Okay. 750 across, 500 down, centered. And then number 3 is 1,750 across, 1,000 down, centered. All right. So yeah, we get some coverage here. Okay, so this is, we'll call this 99, that's 997. I believe this one's 999, this is 998. And now we'll call this one at the front. Uh-oh, where did I put that one? Hang on. It's a lot of motion sensors all over the sub, and it's probably partially my fault. I put in here, I don't know. Anyways, long story short, we're gonna put a thing in the helm where we're gonna put lights. I'm gonna turn them all on. And what I would do is generally make this like the shape of your sub, right? And what you would do is feed those Wi-Fi signals back into, how many? We still got 3 people hanging in there. Okay. The Wi-Fi. Where's my Wi-Fi? There's my Wi-Fi. Signal out to the set color. Signal out to this one. Set color. Signal out. Set color. And we're gonna turn them all on. Don't need to cast shadows. Call it 50. And 255, power consumption 0. And if any of them are, hang on here, or here. Gaming Dad's trying to mess with my jam here. No, we need a signal check. If it is, if the input target signal is 0, 255, 0, 255, 0, I'm going to say 0 out. And if it's a false, if it's true, then we're going to send something to this warning alarm. Because remember, those Wi-Fi signals are all spitting out RGB codes. Is this making sense of the more? Okay. Is this making sense to everybody what I'm doing? Because if you guys don't get it, please ask questions. Because if you don't get it, I can't explain it without knowing what you don't get. Set state. All right. And we're going to say, oh, I don't see any lights. Where do my little lights go? Ha. Well, that's dumb. You see, guys, what I did there? This is the danger of turning off walls and structures when you're placing items. I put them in the floor. Let's see how this goes. This is going to be our last little bit, guys. Last little push, and then I'm going to take a break from live streaming. Oh, this is fun. I like the instant feedback from you guys, and I wish the crowd was larger. Hang on here. These are ball flashing. I need an engineer to come over here for a sec. Some of these lights coming from. Try to make it dark in this room so I can see what's going on. They're blinking. Why are they blinking? What did I change? Must have changed something, guys. Have a flicker speed. We don't want the flicker speed. Okay, we're delete this one. I'm gonna just delete some lights. Sorry about that, buddy, but set these Wi-Fi channels. I did not. Bad Rob. Oh, mine. Bad gaming nerd. What else do you have for lights? Get those. Get rid of that one. Get rid of that one. And a light around here somewhere that's blinking. All right, one last try for all the marbles. Actually, where's your hulls? We'll put a little ambient light in this room. I don't know if I'm the only one, but for me, put two upcoming streams. Boy, I'm setting some high standards. Thank you for letting me know. I will fix that. All right, we have some green lights. Let's lock the X. Lock the Y. So don't have to worry about our sub going anywhere. Now, turn on free cam. This makes us able to move about freely. And let's put a spineling around here somewhere. Spawn, spineling, cursor. And of course he goes right to the front of the sub. No, we should be setting that off. Hang on. There's a console command to turn off the fog. I forget what it is. You know what? No, let's not worry about it. Okay, so he's floating around back there. Is he about to set that off? I think he is. Yep, look at that. We have lights. Red, yellow. You guys seeing that? I consider that a huge success. Great success, yes. Yellow. You guys seeing this? Come on. Orange, yellow, red. Nice, he says. Absolutely. All right, so I want to go back. Why did that work? Why did that? How are we changing the colors selectively? And why does it matter what my signal check component values were? 3 hours, man. This is ridiculous. Come on, Rob. Okay. So we have one sensor that reads out to 1,000. We have another sensor that reads out to 500, and another one that reads out to 250. Okay? And these feed into their own respective signal check blocks. Okay? We know that if it's not at the 1,000, which is this one, we don't care. If it's outside of this range, doesn't matter what it is. So, if it's this one, if it's within here, it's also going to be in the big one, right? Because the big one reaches out to 1,000, and that overlaps with the 500, and that overlaps with the 250. So we want the signals from the 500 to override the signals from the 1,000, because that's more important. And we want the signals from the 250 to override the signals. Sorry. Pardon me. We want that to override the signals from the 500 or the 1,000, because that's also more important. However, the set output channels of these signal check blocks, this signal only gets passed when the true condition is satisfied, right? So if we're using the output of these motion detectors as the trigger for the signal, like, because remember, this one here, this signal component in signal check here in the middle, is the one that produces, this is orange, amber, right? But but that's only when the motion sensor is, see, when the target signal is false, right? So when the motion sensor in the middle detects something, it outputs a 1, which arrives in the signal input of the signal check block. It's compared to the target signal, which is a 0. Therefore, the false condition is met, and this signal is sent, which is amber. Okay, that signal is sent into this signal block down here. That arrives down here at the set output. Okay, if this motion sensor is not sending a signal, right? So that means our monster is closer than 500, but not less than 250, right? That means the true condition, because this motion sensor is not producing an output, and the target signal of the bottom, they're all three of them. Target signal is 0. So because that is a 1, or sorry, this is a 0. Hang on. False output is red. Doing this wrong. No, I did it right. We saw it. It was working. If this is producing a 1. Oh, right. So the target signal here is a 0. So if this thing isn't sending anything, then the true output is being passed out through the signal output, and the true output is the feed from the previous signal block. Does that make sense, guys? Right? So if this one's true, if this smaller one, which is within the 250, if that one's true, this signal check component, or this motion sensor, starts spitting out a 1, which is not equal to the target signal, and therefore the signal check block starts spitting out its false output, which is red. Right? If the 250 is not tripped, but the 500 is, right, now this one is sending out, hang on, its false output, which is amber. Right? If this one is not sending a signal out, if this one's also 0, right, this target signal of the signal check block is 0, and so the true condition is output, and the true condition output of this one is this output from the previous signal block. Now this one is the key one because it only has, we don't have a feed from it to pass on. Therefore, if this motion sensor is false, i.e. nothing's being detected, it outputs green. Otherwise, it outputs yellow. This is how you put essentially an if then else statement. Because this is if greater than 1000, green. If less than 1000 and greater than 500, yellow. If less than 500 but greater than 250, orange. If it's less than 250, red. That's what this arrangement of signal blocks allows us to do. Oh, signal blocks and motion detectors. So, in summary, wiring components can be used to monitor or manipulate the signals that come from the signal generators and go into the signal driven systems around the sub. Also, Streamy loves a closet. I'd love to see how many closets you have in your home, Streamy. Because this is. They make TV shows about this kind of level of storage. Still, good sub. Nice sub. I like this sub. That's a good sub. The easiest change that I would recommend would be to change up your guns. Coil guns are so 2021. Let's see. They're all trade-offs, right? The coil guns have rate of fire and capacity, but they consume a lot of power. The chain guns have speed. They fire a lot of bullets really fast, but they don't have a lot of power. Like, no, a lot of kinetic energy. They don't hit as hard as a coil gun shot. And the pulse lasers hit hard, but they take a second to charge up. The rate of fire is much lower. So, and railguns just are beast mode, but they suck up power like you wouldn't believe. So, if you were to try, I like EK mods. I know people poo-poo on EK mods all the time, but they just offer so many options that are just not available in vanilla. That it's just not. It's just no comparison. Streamy's bed in a river or a lake. I don't know. Oh, Streamy. Ah, I see what you're saying. I want to show you guys something real quick. Change guns in campaign. I don't want to start with all OP guns. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, hang on. Oh, I want to save this. Cancel. Save. Seawolf. TGN. Really quickly, I want to go back. I think I talked about it yesterday about the Fugu. I wanted to. I think he's. Oh wait, shoot. That was the same thing, Rob. Change guns campaign. I think I still have the Fugu, but it's considered a mod now, so I gotta go find it. Where's my Fugu? Fugu 3. Fugu V3. Fugu V5, V6. Okay. I think it's the V6, but I'm gonna take the Fugu 3 over here and see what happens. Supply. I have not. Okay. Open. I don't know if these work, guys. I haven't looked at these in a very long time. Oh no, this one doesn't work. So this is the Fugu. Let's try Fugu V6 then. Bunch of error messages. Watch this. Big old red font. Betcha. Turn off my hulls and my wires. So this is the Fugu. Does this work? Do I have holes in everywhere? No, it missed out on some shell figure. Yeah, the whole shell's missing. Hang on. There you go. Lighting. Okay. So this beast is heavily overpowered. However, you'll notice all those flaps, right? This is my old reactor controller, but this captain has the option. There's a button down here that if that button is not pressed, all those flaps are closed and all the guns are not accessible. Yeah, but they're not shadow casting. Casting is the Let's see if this works. I don't know if this is gonna work. This thing's probably gonna sink like a rock. I made this a few mods ago. Like, this is one I've been trying to get back to. I've just been kind of busy. I think everything dies as soon as I start up. Yeah, load times are proportional to the number of items in your sub. Okay, here we go. 3. So lock X, lock Y. Switch to this guy. Uh-oh, where's my... I don't even know where my reactor room is. I'm guessing it's got to be down here. Oh, it's this. Hang on. Aha! Oh man, you can tell it's been a while since I've been in here. Oh, that's magazine storage, so that was the reactor room up here. Sorry guys, it's not impressive when you can't see a damn thing. Did it even have a reactor? I think this is still running my PID. Oh, 5. This is when the viewers show up. When I'm showing off my waypoints are not updated. The captain keeps running into a wall. Yeah, I don't like bots. I don't think I ever played with... Yeah, see, there's a problem. The reactor's missing. That... Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna have to remake this. Look at all those junction boxes. Yes, sad face. Alright. So I can't show off the Fugo. But I'll remake her. Better, stronger, faster. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry that you guys are late to the party or just getting here to the end. But we've talked about all the components. Every last one of them. Please, if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing for more content. That way you get notified. You'll be the first to know next time I drop another bomb of knowledge. And other than that, guys, hang on here. Once again, thank you so much for sticking around, guys. It has been 3.5 hours of fun for me. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you learned something. I hope you learned something. That's the point of the channel. Please, questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, well, you can keep those last ones to yourself. But if you have any suggestions for the channel and future videos, you'll see me update the sub on stream. That one, I'd probably start from scratch. Trying to go in and figure out everything that's changed on the mod, I would probably start that one from scratch. But streaming, it's good to know when you're online. I'll give you guys some updates as I go. Thinking about doing some videos on how to stream because I'd love to see you guys playing. And it's nerdy. But yeah. I had a good time too, guys. Listen, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe, and as always,